The many allied races of the Al-Arabi War returned to their homes, packs laden with gobbling alchemies, trinkets, and tales of the mighty prowess of the children of Gob. The vicious alchemical weapon that the goblins had used to defend their camps, the savage stinging powder known as rock dust, was adopted by mortals of Gaia under the name vitriol. Generations passed. Gob'Razhatak grew and grew, shining as a radiant oasis in the heart of the Aragoa. Trade routes brought wealth beyond measure, Dverg weapons and armor, Manvas fashion, Shi treasure, and the raw materials needed to expand an empire. The question of how to integrate the Ogrins was solved quickly by imitating Atlantishar's tiered caste-based society. They had seen how a society as wise as the Shi had created stability by creating a family of rulers who ruled over enforcers and commanded the producers. Seeing the parallels to their own races, the crafty goblins fit the role of producers, while the mighty Ogrins became enforcers, and at the top were the Urukus, who had been tutored by their father Gob in the ways of the mortal races. And but for a spell, this society flourished. And this, my children, is where we must draw a lesson. It is here that our ancestors failed, for we, the children of Gob, had become seduced and thus shackled to the idea that a civilization must follow like that laid out by other races. That we must let our minds be colonized by outsiders who tell us they are more advanced than us, more civil than us. It is in growing like the wetlanders that we forgot the first law of the Aragoa. The waste of our father Gob abhors stasis above all else. The waste is a mighty power source from where magic flows. It is the call of the warrior spirit that links us to our ancestors. It is the fire of the first kiln that sits in all of our hearts. It burns the static and creates movement, and always seeks to refine its creations, then try them against each other. We forgot this, and all of Gob's children felt their hearts pushed by the will of the Aragoa to act out, to seize the initiative, to grasp dominance. Why were the goblins at the bottom of the stack, they realized, when they were the firstborn? When their parents and grandparents themselves had built the other races? Why were the Ogrins forced to be enforcers? Iron could do so much more than make war, and their stomachs could hardly be supported by what the puny goblins could grow. And why were they in one city? The Urukus should be expanding, conquering. Did not the philosopher kings and warrior poets expand a city when it grew this great? And would there still be a place for them in this theater of war? All at once, the city of Gob'Razhatak fell into chaos and violence. Alchemical bombs burst their walls, mighty arms thrashed houses asunder, and brother slew brother in a mad frenzy. And atop all this bloodshed, all this war, Gob fell to his knees and wept. His children were broken. They could no longer see common brotherhood. They had forgotten their ways, not only as creatures of the Aragoa that had forged them, but also as a family. And with hardly a word, he locked the door of his workshop and descended the stairs of his foundry, never to be seen again. In less than a generation, constant war destroyed all traces of Gob'Razhatak. The children of Gob, the Urukus, the Ogrins, and the Goblins all had a post-combat moment of clarity when they watched the walls of their father's workshop collapse. Whatever magic of science had built his machines, they were capable of making the door to his basement undetectable beneath the sands. The land around Gob'Razhatak was crushed to infertile sand. Their technological wonders were bent out of shape and out of charge, and their exotic trade goods quickly rusted and splintered in the harshness of the waste. It is then that the first Durub Maush, or chief meet, would occur. Kalushadar of the Gentilak stepped forward to speak for the Urukus, his left eye milky white and crossed with heavy, unhealed scars. His once splendid coat of plates was now a tattered tunic, littered with twisted metal scraps. He planted his cleaving spear in the earth and announced, "We have lost our way. We have forgotten that the Aragoa does not harbor kings. We have grown soft behind these walls, and our legs have forgotten travel. My family will gather the remains of our empire and take on a nomadic life. Never again will we lay down permanent foundations. We must remember that movement preserves the mind. It is within our blood that we may be great builders, but it is will of that beyond mortality that we will never remain in one dwelling for a full solar cycle. So committed I am that I will split apart my family among my sons, so that our numbers will not grow so greatly focused again, and we will call these families tribes. And thus, Kalushador split the Gentilak into many warring tribes, and whenever a tribe grew too great, it would split into more tribes, so that the pull of the Aragoa would not be able to fixate on them. Golgash of the First Mound stepped forward to speak for the Ogrins. Clothing could not contain his mighty form, and he stood stripped to the waist, his countless scars worn across his red, rippling chest and back like trophies. From his back he drew two mighty atrocity sabers, each as long as a man and serrated with teeth, and he threw them beside Kalushador's polearm and shouted, "We have grown proud! We were peerless before the Al-Arabi, and have mistaken that for invincibility. And now look at us! Many children here do not know whom they come from. Many families know not where their next meal will come from. Our father made us into swords of war, and we no longer have a wielder. We are left to rust in the chafing sand. No more! We must forge bonds that go beyond mere blood inheritance. We will create a system of bonds known as pacts. Any orphan without a tribe may form a pact, and any Ogrins may leave their pact to seek out work to feed their bellies when there is nothing to provide around them." And thus Golgash formed the agreement of the pact, that found family that fights with naught but common blood of battle, and through nurturing may grow into their own tribe. Ahul of the workshop stepped forward to speak for the goblins. His body was old and weathered, his copper long ago greened and powdered. He had been among the workers who had forged the other races, his years extended long beyond their limits by the wonders of Gob'Razhatak's golden age of technology. A few tears escaped his silver, artificial eyes as he looked to his bulumbum, ancient crossbow that spat light and death through arcane, alchemical means, and he threw it to the ground. He croaked out,
"We are flawed products of a journeyman smith, not quite ready for his masterwork. Our father has abandoned us to learn from his mistakes. We can no longer rely on Gob to provide. In time, I fear we might not even be able to rely on each other to survive. I will gather the elders of the Gobbling Workshop, and we will use the smoldering embers of Father's forge to craft a song. Each of your tribes and pacts shall select the wisest among you to come to our workshop and learn the song. It will contain all that our people know, and all that we need to survive the Aragoa. It will contain knowledge most arcane, the medicines that our father stole from the gods themselves, and the ways in which we may placate the powerful double-edged sword of the wastes. It will contain the knowledge of 3 gods who bore us, and it will keep us safe."
And thus, Ahul created a sect of wise men known as songmens, that which we now call shamans, who serve to advise chieftains and keep alive our ways and traditions. And so it came to pass that the people of Gob parted ways, always moving, always forming and breaking alliances, always adapting and changing. Thus is the way the children of Gob lived in harmony with the chaos of the Aragoa. And what of our heavenly father, Gob, of the Irachoak? Some say he died, knees to his chest, his last thoughts that his children were forever cursed to be weapons of those who would exploit them. Some say he stepped into the astral and merged with the will of the Aragoa. But to many of his children, they know he is deep in his forge, crafting a golden race, free of the impurities of his firstborn.